Hello, today we're going to talk about neuroplasticity and the benefits of immaturity in humans. Children growing up today have high expectations in both schooling and behavior, and we have this constant goal of preparing them for adulthood. But does having a childhood have any benefits within itself? Are there any major benefits to immaturity in humans? Well, I can tell you that there is. There are benefits of immaturity and delayed development. This allows for the brain to be adaptive, flexible. It allows for freedom and exploration, increased flexibility in learning, and it's necessary to have these delayed development and long periods of immaturity to master the complexities of society and skills such as cooperation, competition, and acquiring social norms in the culture the child may find themselves in. Compared to other animals, humans have some of the longest gestational periods, longest prenatal brain growth periods, largest postnatal brain growth periods, prolonged periods until puberty is reached at 13, and the longest periods of immaturity and dependency compared to all other mammals. So to put it short, humans have big, slow-growing brains. It's not just preparation for adulthood. There's a relationship between brain size, the social complexity of the culture, and the length of the juvenile period. So essentially, the greater ability for plasticity and modifiability of the brain. And early experiences influence maturation and brain size. Humans have some of the most complex social communities, and it's part of an individual's survival relies on one's ability to navigate social norms, master skills in cooperation, learn when to compete with others, and know who is friend or foe. The rules are different depending on the culture, the time era, and the social class one may find themselves in. But why is this so important? Well, perhaps it's to manipulate others, a greater chance for others to share valuable resources, maybe a better quality in mates, maybe. But what we also see is about overall happiness. Humans need social interactions to be happy, and isolation is often used as punishment, from time out in preschools to solitary confinement in adult prisons. Without mastering social norms of society, it affects humans' overall quality of life. And in order to master this, it takes variability, it requires flexibility, it requires intelligence and mastering of living in groups, and all of that takes a lot of time and experience. How does this work exactly? Well, you're born with 100 billion neurons. That's more stars than are in the Milky Way. Experiences shape and alter the structure and architecture of the brain. Consistently think certain thoughts or do certain activities, and you will strengthen those neurons and those neuron tracks. When we have those strengthened, myelinization occurs. This is the myelinization sheath right here on the neuron's axon. This substance is mostly water and salt. Don't do certain activities, or don't think certain thoughts, or don't engage in certain chemical or hormonal levels, and those neurons will be weakened or even die away. Now, let's see an example of this played out in real life research. A study was conducted using 6-month-olds and 9-month-olds. What they did was they showed the 6-month-olds and 9-month-olds repeated pictures of different lemur faces. And what they found was the 6-month-olds continuously engaged and were excited by the photos. Why? Because they could tell the lemurs apart. The 9-month-olds, when repeatedly shown different lemur faces, got bored and rambunctious. Why? Because they couldn't tell the lemur faces apart. Well, there's no surprise why, by 9 months old, children can't tell lemur faces apart. It's not a skill that we need. We don't need to recognize different primates. We need to recognize different humans. And by 9 months old, they're already differentiating mother's face from grandma's face, from dad's face, from their sister's face. So, because you're born with so many more neurons than you'll ever need, your ability to distinguish primate faces isn't necessary. And so those neurons do diminish fairly early in human life. Another famous study, it's called the Harvard Piano Study. And what they did at Harvard was they had volunteers practice a 5-finger piano exercise for 5 days for 2 hours, and then test it at the end of each day. What they did was they showed a magnetic simulation test which shows the functions of the neurons within the brain. What they found after 1 week was the motor cortex part devoted to finger movements took over surrounding areas of the brain. What Harvard did next was they expanded the study, and they got new volunteers and only had the volunteers think about playing the piano exercise. What they found in the imaging was exactly the same and had the same effect on the brain. It altered the brain matter and reorganized the brain in the motor cortex part devoted to finger movements just by thinking about playing the piano. So why are these studies important? Well, they tell us that the brain isn't unchanging. The brain retains impressive powers of neuroplasticity and the ability to change its structure based on and in response to experiences. And even the adult brain can be rewired. Other reasons why these studies are important. The environment in which children find themselves affects their brain. How we treat children affects their brain. How they think of themselves changes their brain. And understanding immaturity and the benefits of it changes how you see their behavior. Now let's go ahead and talk about preschool and rats. Well, this is a study that had tremendous impact on early education, and it started with lab rats. So they had 2 sets of rats. One rat lived in an enriched environment and one lived in a deprived environment. And let me describe a little bit more what those environments look like. The enriched environment group, the rats had toys, they had things to climb and dig through, and they had other friend rats, and they lived their lives in that environment. Now, the deprived environment rats didn't have toys. They had nothing to climb. They had nothing to dig through. They didn't have other rat friends, and therefore they had no socialization. They just had food and water. What they found was once the rats matured, they took them out of their cages and they looked and studied their brains. And they found that the enriched environment rats had large brains. They were able to do cognitive tasks quickly, well, for a rat anyway, such as mazes, and that they had lower anxiety levels and lower stress levels compared to the deprived environment rats. These rats had much smaller, physically smaller brains. They had a harder time or were unable to complete cognitive tasks. And they had much higher anxiety levels. Also, once placed in environments with other rats, they were more destructive and violent. So what does that mean when it comes to preschool? Well, it talks about enriched and deprived environments for children. What we want is to create environments that are enriched, because we know that it can damage the brain if they don't have those kinds of interactions with others, with toys, with trained staff. And so this look at enriched and deprived environments has really set the tone on why early childhood interventions and preschool programs are important for brain development. Now, what happens if we were deprived humans of other human contact, of diverse environments, and of play? Go ahead and click through the module and you'll find our next video.